2020 started the same as any year. At Newton North, the school musical had just begun its rehearsal process that would continue for the next 3 months. However, when lockdown struck in mid-March, many projects had to be stopped. But the musical was determined to make it through, racing to completion a week ahead of schedule. This is how Hello Dolly changed from just another Newton North musical into a show-stopping success. But before all that, we need to go back to the beginning. Starting back in the spring of 2019, where the Theatre Inc. staff had just begun the decision-making process for their 2020 musical.
The musical every year is one of the hardest shows to choose for a number of reasons. You know, you want to pick something that's good for the community. For example, last year we did Rock of Ages, which had more of an edge to it. It probably played more towards a older audience in terms of maybe, late, teens into adults and further, and then you look at a show like we did a couple years ago, Cinderella, which plays to a younger crowd and that sort of thing. So each year we try to make a decision based on what's good for the community, what's good for the school, what will people really want to see, where you can, sometimes you make the decision, what could you bring your grandmother or grandfather to?
And we kind of start with a broad number, and we look at all of those shows, and the first filter that's used is, are the shows in a format that can accommodate a cast of approximately 50. And so it's such a complex process, and I know that with Mike, Jay, and I, we try very hard to just be open to whatever show, we kind of narrow down to, because there's just so many opinions that you want to deal with, at a time. And there's so many other things that are the practical questions, that once they get all those questions answered, we just kind of stay a little on the quiet side. We say, oh, yeah, no, I'd love to do this, or I'd love to do that, but I'm okay with this, or I'm okay with that, just so that it makes it less constricting.
The show was decided as Hello Dolly, an old-school musical about a matchmaker who creates couples and finds her own love.
So Hello Dolly, like I said, it's a classic style musical. You have a female lead, which was really important to us, that we had a lot of female opportunity, and we felt that was important because with musical theater and that sort of thing, and theater in general, it can be very male heavy, and it's really important for us to balance that.
With the show in place, the crew was alerted, and planning began.
I think we found out over the summer, and I remember I was holding it over people's heads because they were all like, what's the musical? And then I was like, I convinced somebody that the musical was Chaplin the Musical, which is just some obscure musical I looked up on Google about Charlie Chaplin.
Told us when we came in to organize over the summer.
Yeah, so August, mid to late August.
And I think this past year, we've been starting the process earlier and earlier. I think our first design meeting, which is just the basic level, start talking about the show with the tech kids, started about the third, maybe the fourth week of September. I'd have to go back and look at dates, but we started before September was out, to talk about the design. I would say one of the design themes that carried throughout the whole show was a sense of lightness.
We had a lot of preliminary rounds of design stuff, talking with the director, Kevin, and all the other designers. Lots of historical basis for everything.
And then creation-wise, we were able to use a lot of the stuff that we already had, which was really helpful. So we recycled a lot of the old costumes, and we looked we used a lot of the Cinderella costumes, and just changed them up.
Do you guys have a favorite costume or set of costumes from the show?
Ermengarde. 100%. So pretty.
Yeah, I think I did most of Ermengarde's work, and her costumes I think were my favorite. And obviously Dolly's costumes were all incredible as well. But I think Ermengarde's just my girl,
I liked
Some very
Irene
specific
Malloy
answers.
and Minnie Faye though, because I think I did a lot of the work on Irene and Minnie, so kind of have a special place in my heart.
I really liked the male waltzer costumes, which we only had a few of, but they're very nice.
Well, the costumes for Dolly are, they put a lot of time into Dolly. She's in almost every single scene. She makes 5, maybe 6 changes over the course of the show, which is unusual for a lead. Oftentimes that many changes happens with our ensemble members. She's very soft in shades of blues and creams when she's in the hat shop. And we see her just barely a scene later or so, and she's in a very powerful red ensemble for when she's about to sing her parade song, where she's sort of really, making her statement of, she's made a decision, and she's made a decision that's going to change her life.
As design came to a close, casting was decided. But with holiday break fast approaching, mixed opinions arose about the show that was to be put on.
I didn't want to do it, to be honest. When I first found out, I was like, oh, wow. Because we kind of do, I feel like Theater Inc. does this back and forth thing. Like the first musical that I was in at Theater Inc. was Cinderella. And then we did Rock of Ages, which is completely different. And now we're back to Hello, Dolly. And it was just a weird kind of back and forth thing. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. But then I started thinking about like all the senior traditions, and I really wanted to kiss the stage and partake in all of the Theater Inc. senior traditions. So I was like, you know what? I'll make the best of it.
So I like the show a lot, actually. I watched the movie several times when I was little, and I saw the touring production last August with Emma Bradshaw, actually, who was my love interest in the show.
I wasn't super thrilled because I knew it was 60s, kind of jazzy, but a little bit on the boring side of musicals. But I had an open mind, I guess.
I remember everyone else knew except for me. So when my friends told me, I freaked out. I was so excited because I'd heard about it, and I knew that it was a huge show and really important to Broadway history. So I got really excited. I hadn't listened to it before, and when I did, I was like, this is such a good show.
I think I was disappointed at first because I remember I sent in a list to Mr. Brown of all the shows that I wanted to do, and Hello Dolly was not one of them. Then I read through the script, and it was funny. It was a fast-paced humor thing, and I was like, all right, this could be good. But the song "It Takes a Woman" was that one. I made me a little uncomfortable at first.
I knew Hello Dolly. I've never listened to the music. I knew it was old, and I wasn't actually too enthusiastic about it at first. But I gave it a listen. I watched some, musicals online, and I started really liking it a lot, and I was really excited for it.
From the community, every reaction was, oh my God, I love Hello Dolly, from staff members. Oh, I can't wait. It's one of my favorite musicals. I'm going to get tickets right when it comes out, that kind of thing. And then there were some, really heavy musical theater kids, not just at our school, were like, oh my God, Hello Dolly. Oh, I love that part, Cornelius, or this part, that part. So there was a lot of hype from those folks. And then of course, you do have kids where it's not exciting. On the surface, it's not an exciting, edgy piece. So sometimes you'll just get silence. Or you'll hear through the grapevine, well, I'm not going to audition. It's Hello Dolly. I don't want, it's old. It's an old show. So you get a mix of things, and I totally get it.
Despite some uncertainties about the show, many were eager to get to work, and rehearsals began for the cast.
I would say we really jumped in very, very quickly to music. Which was a bit of a contrast, I feel like, from other shows, but we definitely jumped straight in with getting all the music out in the first few weeks.
The rehearsal process was definitely a lot more intimidating than I expected because I'd never done a show before.
I remember we would have singing rehearsals, and we'd sit in our sections, and I would sit next to these really nice people, and they'd help you with music, and all of the time the cast was super supportive, even if it had been a long day or we've been at rehearsal for hours. Like everyone there was like really into it.
So I was one of the dance captains along with Emma Davis, which was really fun. So it was cool to have kind of like a leadership role, but like still be able to like perform and be in the show.
I liked a lot of the featured dancer numbers, which were fun. Like Hello Dolly was probably my favorite number in the show, so it was fun being able to work on that.
With a musical so heavily focused on the relationship between characters, the lead actors got to work amongst themselves.
Jonah was probably about as chaotic as I was. We had our troubles trying to get some of those lines down, but I think that the relationship between Dolly and Horace was a complicated one because she knew what she wanted from the start. She wanted his money, she wanted the titles, like that's what she was after. And I think throughout, as the show goes on, you kind of see her maybe changing her view on him a little bit and falling for the person rather than for his money and his items.
And then once I fire Leyla or Dolly, then that's when like Horace kind of begins to create that personal relationship with Dolly and end up falling for her at the end. And then working with Leyla is actually a lot of fun. She brings a lot of energy to rehearsals, and I was like, we were talking about this show beforehand, and I was super excited to get to work with her on this one.
Noah's great. I love Noah. He's such a fun person to work with.
It was so much fun. I think we really bonded a lot, me and Josh. And I think I was on stage once without him there, so we were really together for like every single rehearsal. Building on our friendship and stuff really helped the relationship between the characters, because it's kind of like this older, younger brother feeling, even though Cornelius is like 17 years older for some reason.
But yeah, there was definitely that kind of brothers, annoying kind of younger sibling dynamic, but, always by your side and you're happy to be with him.
At the same time, members of the band started learning their songs for the show.
For a band member, it's a lot of individual practicing beforehand. Chris would send us the tunes we needed to work on before pit, and it was usually, I think, 5 to 7 to work on, and we'd cover them all, and we'd go through these in rehearsal, and in the beginning, he'd start us out with an icebreaker, and then we'd go and play.
We would meet twice a week for, I think, the 4 weeks before the SITS probe. And Chris just sort of sent out what songs we were going to be practicing that week. And then we would take a look at them on our own.
Mid-February, we started rehearsing. And it's 2 practices a week, Wednesdays and Thursday nights, for the entire build up until tech week, and then we're there every day like everyone else. But it was like 3-hour rehearsals, and we had to know like a certain amount of pieces for each rehearsal to be able to play them.
But as the clock moved closer and closer to show night, people became aware of a potential problem.
Were you aware of the coronavirus, and did you think it would end up having an effect on the show?
Yes, 100%. I did not know if it was going to affect us before tech or after tech, but towards the end, I did think that the show was going to be heavily impacted. I didn't know if it was going to be canceled, postponed, or what, but I did know that the coronavirus was getting to a point where it was no longer feasible for the show to be going on at mid-March.
I remember hearing about it and being like, okay, this has nothing to do with me, because it was across the world, halfway, somewhere I'd never been before. So I just immediately was like, it's really bad that this is happening to people, especially in like areas where they might not be able to like be healthy or whatnot, or like have access to things that we do. But I was like, I'll be fine, finish the school year if I can. And I had no clue it was going to be this big.
I did, because I play in the school jazz ensemble, as I said before, and we were going to go to UNH Jazz Festival. and it got canceled.
Well, I first knew about it. I was actually going to go on the trip to China over April break. And so I know people knew about it back then, but I think it was more on my radar because the trip was actually canceled pretty early on, like end of January.
Knowing what loomed on the horizon, plans changed as staff hoped to keep the show ahead of the storm.
Where it really came into the mindset of what if was probably after February break. You know, I mean, who knew that the schools were going to close? But you saw other things happening when it started to hit the United States. And you're like, okay, what's going to happen here? And, you know, and it's surreal in a sense because we as a generation, we've never gone through anything like this. Now there's, you know, Ebola, SARS, and those were awful. And, you know, swine flu. But I don't think we were thinking that this could be what it ended up being.
Literally, it's like watching, I think, how we described it to each other was like watching, a tsunami coming. And you can see it coming, and it's far enough away that you think you can outrun it. And yet, intellectually, you know you can't. We could just see what was coming. There was rumors and conversations going on easily 10 days to 2 weeks before, you know, school ended on the 12th.
But even with all the preparations and changes, it wasn't enough.
The moment was when we saw the principal came in the back, and he came up to me and a couple of the other technical designers and was like, "Hey, do you know where Adam is?" And we were like, "Oh, shit." And we were like, "Yeah, we do. He's over there in the back." And Mike and Jay just looked at each other and they went, "Do we have to come too?" And he went, "Yeah." And so they were gone for like half an hour. All of us just turned to each other, and we had a couple actors come up to us and be like, "Why is he here?" And we were like, "Oh God." And we kind of knew, but we didn't want to say anything. And then people start freaking out, and it would have just caused a mess. And so we were like, all right, just someone play music and we're going to keep this going. But I think that was the moment we were kind of like, this is home. This is no longer like an if, maybe, when. This is a right now.
And so we were so blindsided on Thursday when Principal Turner came down and you know, called all the faculty into Brown's office and met with us and basically said, not only are you're not going to get Sunday, you're not even going to get tomorrow. I'm going to give you 3 hours. You know, there was this pregnant pause that at the time felt like it lasted an hour, but probably was only like 25 seconds, where we just kind of like, all the energy went out, and then we kind of paused, and then it was just like, and we just, Jay and Mike and Brown and myself just like sucked all the air right back into the room, and we said, okay, all right, we're going to do this.
What followed was chaos.
I've always been good in crisis, and a lot of it has to do with being in theater, that a lot of curveballs happen. It's live theater. Anything can happen. So in that moment, it was like, all right, team, let's do it. So what are we going to do? We're going to do A, B, C. Let's get this ready. Let's get the kids ready. And, you know, everybody goes to their respective departments, whether it's Ruth going over to costume, hair, and makeup. You know, Kevin and Chris and Elena are getting the cast together. You know, Mike and Jay with lights and sound. And, you know, everybody's just, boom, go.
That was just like a big roller coaster of emotions, big low to high to like manic for the rest of the night.
For us, because we were already so frazzled about like, oh my gosh, like so much isn't finished. We have to do all of this with safety pins. We don't have enough safety pins and all of that kind of stuff, that it was just like, oh, this is insane.
Not having ever run the show fully with costumes before was also stressful. I think that that was the first time I've had on all my costumes since my costume fitting. So I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this? Where are my changes happening? We haven't run anything. That was probably the most stressful part, just making sure I was where I needed to be when I needed to be there.
Like, how do we do this? How is that possible?
like as the seniors, we spread a lot of encouragement among the cast and tried to really get people to be hyped for this show, because that was the only one we were going to get.
Honestly, it was kind of like a rush of emotions all at once, and like I very much ran on adrenaline. I think when we were kind of programming before and we knew we weren't really going to have an audience, it felt a little bit frustrating because I was like, why are we spending all this time programming? And so I honestly think kind of like realizing, okay, we're just doing it tonight, we're going for it, it was like kind of exciting in a way.
Everybody respected how hard it was for everybody else. And people knew this was my first time, and they were like, you're going to do great. Just take a deep breath. And I know Mike, who's the technical designer, came up to me and he was like, if you fail, just 100% fail.
You know, we just, in that moment, what we told them was that the show is theirs, and that they needed to drive it. They needed to, this was not the time for tears, that time would come. This was not the time to complain. This was not the time to be worried, upset, disappointed. You had to literally package that away, put a lid on it, and save it for later. That all we had time for was to drive the show.
But not everyone was present for the night of the show.
I had like a last block free and I was just not doing great physically or mentally. I was just sick all around. And so I went home after, I had a free last block. So I went home after D block. So I went home at like 12:30.
And I went to the band room and I thought, oh, I might as well just check with Chris to see if he needs me for tonight to play in the pit. And he said that he just didn't have enough time to set up the pit, that it was difficult to set up the monitors, it was difficult to bring in the musicians he had hired, it wouldn't be a complete pit.
And I just like remember me and Liz texting, and we were really disappointed because, you know, I don't know, I know personally it was just like kind of a bummer that we practiced all this time and we really worked hard, and like then the show happened, and even though it was like one show, we weren't even a part of it. So I know that was like a disappointment for me.
To me at that point, missing Dolly seemed like such a trivial thing because I was like, oh, it's just a show. Like I didn't even have that much fun during the process. I'm worried about all these other things that are happening in my life. And if I miss this show, so what? Like I can do shows later. Like obviously I was upset. And when I saw people posting about how great like the show went and how they felt so connected and they're glad that like the last Theatering show went out with a bang like that, I was like, dang, it's really sad that I missed out on that. But I wasn't on that day particularly upset because it seemed like something that I could do another show and it wasn't that big a deal.
So then we emailed the pit director asking if we needed to be there for it because we weren't invited to this dress rehearsal. And he told us that they didn't have time to set up for us. So we could come watch if we wanted to, but like there was no way that we'd be able to participate in it.
As everyone was leaving, I think Chris stopped me and he said, you know, Myles, since you were going to be in the pit, I guess technically you can stick around. And so I was like, okay. I thought about it, but, you know, I didn't want to, you know, mess it up any further. So I didn't try to stay in the auditorium. So I went up to the lobby with everyone else. And I started thinking about it. And I was like, you know, I might as well try and sneak back in if this is my only chance to, you know, see this perform. So I did. I snuck back in. And, you know, I think Brown stopped me. And he was like, Myles, you got to leave. I was like, but can I stay? He's like, oh, yeah, I guess you can. Because you were going to be in the pit. So I sort of used that special status, and I went and sat with the two Dinas in the second row, and I watched the rest of the show, and it was great.
After an hour of panic and final preparations, the dust settled, and the show began.
Oh my God, I had such a mix of emotions, you know. I I'm sitting there and first of all, I'm like, oh my goodness, this could be a show night in terms of the energy and what all of you put into it. The only thing that was missing was the orchestra. It's too bad they weren't there that night. But I'm thinking, are we going to be able to get back and do this again? I was thinking about, oh my God, look at those guys on stage. They're doing such a wonderful job. That choreography looks great. Oh, the set looks great. The lights, the costumes, hair and makeup. Oh my God, it's beautiful. The sound is great. And I'm thinking, I was so proud of everybody to be able to turn it around like that.
Well, okay, because I was never going to see the show. So I guess in that regard, I'm sort of, I'm lucky both in that I got to see it, and then also that I was, one of very few people who got to see it. I think I feel very lucky because, and I said this to a bunch of people after I saw it, I genuinely thought it was really good. Not even given the fact that, it was sort of cobbled together last minute, but I thought it was genuinely a really well done, performance. And it was doubly moving that, it was sort of the first night, last night, only night.
There were plenty of mistakes, but after time and quarantine, much of the cast looked back on it with laughter.
Dolly in the show was sneaking me into the house, and I never went on because my shoes were not tied and they were half on.
I screwed up the lines of my song. It was the beginning of the second verse in It Takes a Woman. I've been working so hard, but I always get them switched up. So I pulled lines from the third verse and put them in the second verse. And so it didn't make any sense, but I just kept singing. To whom can you turn for cleaning the stable? There was a moment in the little dining booth thing with Josh and Jen and Emma, we were just kind of like, what part is next? What line is starting this part? Is it my line or is it your line?
I think the last scene between Jonah and I right before bows, we literally, I think we skipped half a page of dialogue and we ended up just walking off the stage. He was like, I think Jonah said, don't you want to ask me what the painter is doing? And I was like, yeah, what is that for? And then we just walked off stage.
Weren't you wondering about that wallpaper I was installing?
A big one that I had made was during Sunday Clothes. We had never actually practiced doing the song with our aprons and with the clothes that we were going to be putting on for the Sunday Clothes number. So our instruction was during this specific part, we're going to untie our aprons and toss them over our shoulder, all super easy, right? So I guess just having not practiced with it, I just totally forgot to untie my apron at the right time. And so I had to stand there, hands behind my back, frantically trying to untie it. And of course the knot was stuck. So it took me pretty much that entire verse to just untie it and finally get it off quickly and toss it onto the set piece before it moved off a few seconds later.
The show wasn't perfect, but despite being cut short on time, resources, and preparation, it thrived.
My first emotion was proud. I was really proud of everyone and myself, and just, every aspect of Theater Inc. came together when you needed it to.
3, 2, 1.
Kissing the stage was important to me. I wanted to be able to do that. I knew that this was going to be my last Theater Inc. production, so it was nice to be able to do it in front of an audience or not.
I think Big Musical is very much a staple of a lot of people's Theater Inc. journeys, even if it wasn't their favorite show to be in. And just something about kissing the stage as a senior in Big Musical is something you think about for a long time.
It just kind of felt a little bit like a victory, you know, like we actually just did that. Because I feel like by the end of it, we were all on like such a high because we were like, wow, we really just ran this in one night.
I don't know if I ever smiled that big before, but I had this big smile plastered on my face and I was like, wow, we did it.
It felt like everyone was like coming together once. Like I don't think ever in rehearsal it felt like everyone was like on the same page, ready to go full force into the show. And I think that might have been like the only moment maybe in any show that I've ever been in that it felt like that.
So I'm just glad that I got to see the product of what they had been working on and to sort of be a witness to the fact that, you know, they did put something really awesome together.
And I don't know, it kind of felt like a movie moment in a way, that like they're about to then roll the credits, where, I don't know, like it didn't matter what side of theater people had been on, what interactions we'd had in the past, like, I don't know, we were just all on the same side. It was nice.
And I'm so glad that we got that experience because I know so many other schools didn't. So I'm glad that the last day at least got to be spent with everyone.
Honestly, I wish I had thought more about just what was happening at that moment, because God, that's the last time I'm gonna even like be on that stage anymore. Just step foot on it, really, because we're not going back to school. It felt good in the moment. I just wish I had, you know, kissed the stage a little bit longer.
I think, like, considering where we were, like, when we had to put on that show, we went from, like, pretty bad to, like, really good as soon as we heard the announcement. So that was really impressive for me.
I was still in shock for like a solid week of what we were able to do. And the fact that we all came together and put on an incredible show, like for the first time, with I just couldn't believe it.
Honestly, like doing the finale right before was so amazing. Like we had no blocking for it. We were all just standing there singing. But it was like such an incredible experience to just feel like we were all there and we were all so proud of ourselves for like getting through it.
Brown got choked up and Ruth got teary, and I think I saw Mike wipe away a tear. It really filled me with so much appreciation for them because they do so much for us and they're just working there all the time, and they really want the best for us as their students and as a department, and they just put so much into it, and I felt so much appreciation for them.
And then I got emotional about it. I was, you know, to think we've been going 90 miles an hour through this process that has mostly ups and some challenges, and here we are forced to do it one last time. And I was thinking about the seniors on stage, and you know that this was their last musical, and who knows what, you know, what the next month was going to be. And during I'm going to get emotional now, you know, the moment where we did Kiss the Stage was just, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was bittersweet. I wanted our kids to have what we originally imagined it to be. But, you know, then in perspective, I thought, well, I'm glad we have this.
Hello Dolly was lucky. Many shows around the world were forced to be cancelled as a result of coronavirus. But instead of dying out, Hello Dolly rose up to find magic in a single performance. Though the world faces tough times and many have suffered because of it, we can continue to find joy. Making the best of a bad situation can make it something greater.